This is a combination gauge. On one side it's got two spurs which are adjustable for when you're mortising, but we're going to use it as a marking gauge for this project, and we're going to make use of that single spur, and we're going to set the fence to 25 millimeters from the point of the spur to the edge of that fence, and we're going to tighten it using this knurled screw. You can set these really accurately. If I come closer, I'll show you. You can put the spur into the 25 millimeter mark of your steel rule, and then you can bring the fence up to the end of your steel rule so that you can actually feel that spur is sitting in the engraved line that's 25 millimeters. When you've achieved that, you can tighten up your knurled screw and check it, and that is exactly 25 millimeters. Having got your combination gauge set, you then hold it properly, and the correct way to hold it is to have your thumb so that it's pushing against the spur. That's where the resistance is going to be. Your three fingers around the stem and your on top. And then have a practice at running the tool against that edge with the spur trailing behind, not actually touching the wood. And when you're comfortable that you've got your stock against the work, you've got your stem against the work, and there's no wobble on it, just rotate that spur round so that it's dragging behind the tool, but it's marking the work, just gently. It doesn't have to be too heavy a mark. You can go through over the end of the work, and you can then go back on the other side. And that will have marked that exactly 25 millimeters. I'm going to run a pencil along that line just to make it a little bit more visible, and a pencil along that line just to make it a bit more visible. And then we're going to use a handsaw just to cut that piece off on the waist side of the line, leaving ourselves a little bit of room for manoeuvre so that we don't go behind the line. Unlike the dovetail saw we're using, this handsaw doesn't have a back to it, so it means we can go clean through the wood without any difficulty. I'm going to use my thumb as a guide, drawing the saw towards me, being careful of those teeth, a lot bigger than the previous ones. As soon as I've got the curve started, I'll take my thumb off. I've turned the work round and I can finish off the cut from the other side. I've got a really clear line to follow, and all I have to do is to plane back to the line. Perfect. And now I've got a square end here and a square end here, so what I'm going to do is to measure from both ends 115. So here's, just make sure the rule is flush. There's one mark, 115. I'll square my line round. I haven't checked because the 115 isn't crucial. It's a nominal length that I've picked out of the air. So I squared my line round, and all I've now got to do now is to saw that off. and repeat the process from the other square end. 115, pop a mark, knife on the mark, and done. 2 identical bits. We're now going to screw and glue this batten to the end of our base by putting a screw in about here and about here. And all I'm going to do is just measure that rough distance to make it the same each side. So I want it in the middle of the batten, and I want it the same distance from each end, just for, I don't know, just for neatness sake. 15mm, that is. So a slightly quicker way for this sort of marking up is I can measure 15mm from the edge of the square to the square end of the wood, and I can draw a line going right into that corner, turn it round and do the same thing. Same with the other batten. And then I've got to find the middle, which I can measure, 12.5mm. So I'm going to draw a face side and a face edge on here. This is not great, this is better. So this can be my face side, this can be my face edge. So I'll work to those faces. I've set my combination gauge up to 12.5mm, and I can put a very short line across that mark so that I've got a definite point at which I'm going to drill. Same on the other piece. I've chosen a number 8 3/4 inch screw to join the two bits together, and the shank of this screw, which is that plain bit here, is about 3.5mm, and I'm going to drill a 4mm hole through the batten so that this is a clearance fit, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I've settled my workpiece in the jaws. I've got a piece of MDF underneath it so that the wood won't break out when the drill finally comes out the other side. I'm going to make a mark with a scriber so that I know exactly where that hole has got to be, and I'm going to drill through the piece of work, holding the drill so that it's absolutely perpendicular. And there are my 2 holes and very little breakout. The screw is now clearance fit in the batten, and all I've got to do now is to put a counter sink into the top of that hole so that the screw head is flush. And for that I'm going to use a countersink bit. If you make the countersink hole just slightly smaller than the head of the screw, when the screw's driven in and the fibres get compressed, the head should then end up absolutely flush. If you make it the right size and the fibres get compressed, then it can easily end up that your head isn't flush but sunken in, which isn't the end of the world, but it's nice to get it right. Now all that remains to be done is to fix the batten in exactly the right place so it's dead flush with the front surface, dead surface with the side. Pop the screw through the hole, press it down. That gives you a little mark that you can open out with your scriber just to give the thread a start. the screw into the hole that you've created. Line it up. And using the correct size screwdriver, i.e. one that doesn't float around inside the crosshead of the screw, you can fix that in place. And we can do the same thing again with the screw on the other side. Line up that batten on the front face. Pop the screw through, move it over so that you've got access to that little mark, make that wider. Pop the screw in, hold it in position as the screw goes in so it doesn't move. And if I'm brutally honest, I could do with those countersink holes being just a fraction deeper, but I'd rather that way around than the other way around. So just take that out a minute. Could have been made for it. Do the same with the other one. Perfect, good. Last thing, just a line of glue, because what we're doing is we're using the screws as a cramping mechanism really, so that the glue is compressed and spreads and is held under compression while it dries, and it's the glue that does the mechanical fixing rather than the screws. And we'll do the same the other side. And there we are, one completed bench hook. And this is how you use it. You slide it into a gap, doesn't have to be solid. You put your work onto that stop, put your weight against the bench hook and the bit you're going to saw. And you saw through onto your bench hook. And yes, you make a mark on it, but in the end, you'll make another one of those and you'll have a Workmate without any saw cuts in it.